Ep.206.
Yo, what's up, world? It's your boy Armand coming at you from Tampa, Florida. I'm joined today by my co-hosts Jason and Tim.
Yo, 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 Big Tim here, Tampa, Florida. What's up, world?
Jason checking in. I'm in the Southwest, the land of enchantment, New Mexico. If you haven't been and you live in the United States of America, visit the land of enchantment.
For sure, I definitely second that. It's definitely underappreciated and little known scenic beauty. But much appreciation for everyone who's tuned in. We hope you enjoyed today's show, where we will be talking about identity. But before we can get into it, there's a special guest and a good friend of mine with us today who's actually the inspiration behind today's episode. So, without further ado, it's time for Armand's cringe and cheesy intro. Introducing now, speaking out of Calabasas, California, and here to share her story, we have Nava, the plant whisperer, Esmileyzade. Welcome to the show, homegirl.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here.
That was more cringy than even I thought it was. I need to give it a little bit more practice, but it'll work for the first time. Oh my God.
I loved it. That was like the best introduction I think I've ever had by far.
Thank you. I'm not quite as good as Bruce Buffer yet, the inspiration behind that, but I'll get there. Practice makes perfect.
Awesome. I'm
Well
excited
done.
to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So, as I said, today's episode is identity, and like I said, you're the inspiration because the story that you shared with me that you will soon share with the world is kind of what made me think you'd be the perfect person to come on here and talk about this subject. So I know that I found out kind of in an embarrassing way because of me making an assumption. So I guess we can just start there.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I think it was like just about a year ago. Armand and I were actually at this conference together, and I had to step away because I was filling out some application, and he came and asked me what I was doing, and I explained that I was writing like a little paragraph about my experience with my hair, and that I had a pretty unique hair story. And there was this thing called Her Place Is In, which is this amazing organization that does different projects around female empowerment. And they had one session on hair, and they asked me to apply. And I remember Armand was like, "What do you, some Persian girl, know about traumatic hair stories?" And I told him I actually had an interesting one. When I was in the third grade, I lost my hair to alopecia. Um, and yeah, it was, I can kind of go into the story from then. Um, when I was just in the third grade, I was getting ready for school one day, and my mom was brushing my hair, and she found like a little bald patch on the back of my head. And from there, uh, I realized that I had alopecia, and I lost all my hair in just 1 week from that first incident, which was a pretty intense journey, especially for a young girl, especially when so much of female identity is based on femininity, and that's so attached to how your hair looks and how long your hair is. And so, as a young girl, losing my hair, um, as a young Persian girl losing my hair, it was a pretty big shock. And I remember at the beginning, um, I like pretended like nothing had happened. I went to school, and my mom had gotten me a wig, and like I wore a hat on top of it. And I remember someone asking me like, "Oh, I heard that you lost your hair." And I was like, "No, what are you talking about? I didn't lose my hair. Like nothing happened." And
Oh, poor thing.
You put
it
that
was
Jersey Shore, that deny.
exactly, yeah. I literally like just it just happened so quickly. I didn't know, like I didn't really know. I was only in third grade. I didn't know what was happening to me, and um, the only thing I knew how to do was to just pretend like nothing was happening. But then that like soon faded. I was like a pretty active young girl. Like I really enjoyed playing handball and basketball and doing flips, and all that stuff wasn't really, I couldn't do that stuff while wearing a wig when I was little. So I soon kind of left that behind and was like pretty open about my hair loss from then.
Well, so help me out a little bit because I don't know if I'm inventing something or I'm just misremembering the story when you told me initially. But I seem to remember there being something about a snake. Was it not that maybe you
Uh,
started to see some recovery and started to get some of your hair back? And then there's a snake incident which caused you to go, I mean, I don't know if this is technically the right term, but remission, like it started to come back.
Yeah, so okay, so let me just explain a little bit. I don't know if everyone knows like what alopecia is, but it's an autoimmune disorder where essentially your body attacks your hair follicles thinking that it's a virus. So there's not a lot of, like a lot of autoimmune disorders, there's a lot of things that can trigger it. And for me, we weren't really sure what triggered it, but when I was in the third grade, just about 2 or 3 weeks before my mom found that first bald patch on my head, I was at a field trip and I was like sliding. We were in the mountains and I was sliding down this rock patch, and at the end of it there was a creek. And as I started to slide down it, someone saw there was a rattlesnake in the creek, and I remember like I couldn't get myself to stop sliding, and it was just like really scary. I thought I was going to get bitten by the snake. Um, and that was one thought of like perhaps that was a scary enough moment or something traumatic that caused it. And then a week after that, actually, someone came to drop something off at my home, and they called my mom saying that they saw a rattlesnake outside of my house. And so I was like so terrified. I would not leave my house. My dad had to pick me up and take me to the car, like if he wanted me to leave the house. I didn't take a shower for a week because I was so scared of snakes, like sliding up the drains, and I was just like so scared. But yeah, so that they pretty much thought that perhaps that snake incident was what caused it at the beginning. But by the time I was in the sixth or seventh grade, my hair grew back. And then when I started high school, my first day of high school ever, it actually started to fall out again and
Mm,
hasn't grown back from then.
okay. So it's safe to say you're not going to get a pet rattlesnake anytime soon.
No, but I do like every time I see a snake at like a zoo or wherever, I do make a point to hold it because I'm trying to conquer my fears.
Okay. And yeah, I guess is unless I don't know how they do this at zoos and whatnot, but I guess they don't really have rattlesnakes there because obviously they're venomous. And I'm sure if they have rattlesnakes at zoos, they might take the venom out or whatnot. But would you be up to holding an actual rattlesnake?
I mean, if I see someone else doing it and I know it's okay, then I'll do it. But I just don't like snakes. Like, I don't know why they don't have legs. It doesn't make
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had a dream maybe about a month ago that actually freaked me out. I literally woke up like jolting. I jumped like out of my bed. There was not a rattlesnake. Look at me. There was this snake. I don't know what kind that came up out of the garbage disposal and was like twitching around everywhere. And I seriously was shook for a while. And that was just a dream. So
Yeah, they're pretty terrifying.
I have a snake interjection real quick, and question for that matter. I appreciate Nava what I'm hearing your story so far, and also the shared sentiment here, a little bit of fear of snakes. And I'm just wondering if anyone's ever come across culture or reference in a way that shows snakes as a positive symbol.
mm. Not off the top of my head. I mean, every time you hear about it in literature or movies, there's some it's there's some negativity attached to it, like something to be feared, something to be, just scared of in general. Even in Harry Potter, their house symbol is a snake. It's a serpent. And Slytherin has a reputation of being the most evil house. Obviously, Lord Voldemort, the most evil person maybe in literature ever, is from that house. So anything that I can think of, there's no real positive representation of snakes. Maybe if you find some person in downtown New Orleans who reads your palm and tells you your future, they might say something that snakes are good. But other than that, I can't really think of anything.
Yeah, my mom has a huge phobia of snakes. Like, she doesn't mess around. Like, she'll literally start to get chills, and her body involuntarily just reacts big time just at the word mentioning of a snake. And I think that maybe the phobia has its roots in religion, as far as the biblical story of Adam and Eve and the snake. I know when my mom talks about her phobia every once in a blue moon, she refers to growing up and being taught that. And she expresses that as a big factor as to why she's afraid of snakes. So it might play a role. Its religious roots might play a role as to why that snake is portrayed the way it is. But we also know that there's many different poisonous snakes out there in the world, and maybe this is a widely held view over the evolution of human history here. But if I could switch topics here and pivot here, Nava, I just want to say from myself that it's a pleasure to have you on here. I
Thank
found it
you.
very fascinating sharing what you shared with us. Terribly sorry that your unique narrative started so early with a condition that is, like you said, it very well affects your identity, especially as a female, uniquely here in our society as well. I'm curious, since this started in the third grade, and you've been dealing with this for a long time now, is it safe to assume that from the onset long ago till now, um, would you say that you've developed and adapted and gotten used to your condition at this point? Um, or is it any less harder or, you know, or more difficult as the years went
Yeah.
on? What is it like for you now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it kind of has evolved as I have evolved throughout my life. At the onset, like it was definitely a shock, and I think that uh, became evident in my reaction to it. I was kind of trying to hide it. I didn't really know what to do. But then from then on, like in the third grade, I was so open. I didn't, I wouldn't wear bandanas. I didn't wear anything. Like I just wanted to be a kid that could play around. And I'm really lucky. I have a pretty big family. There's four girls in my family, and I'm the second of four girls. And I had a really big support system that would always instill this sense of inner beauty in me. So, this idea that my identity wasn't based on what I look like, but rather my spiritual qualities that I could portray. And that had a really big impact on me from a very young age because, as much as it did impact me, it also didn't really impact me. I didn't, like I've talked to a lot of people that have had alopecia, and a lot of people go through a lot of traumatic times with something like this. I know a lot of girls that I've talked to have suffered from depression, just different challenges, and I was lucky enough to not really feel those things. But with that being said, when my hair grew back in the seventh grade.
Mm.
And then when it fell out on my first day of high school, that was like a really hard
Oh
time
my God.
because
That's almost like someone's playing a
Yeah,
joke
I
on you the
can't
first day of
imagine.
high school.
I can't even
literally,
imagine.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it was the worst. I was like, like you're a ninth grader and you're like, oh, like I'm gonna be so cool. Like I'm gonna step into school and like make my way. Like I thought I was gonna like conquer the world, and then and it was pretty hard that time because I definitely cared a lot more about what my peers thought about me at that age, which is pretty natural as a ninth grader. And I remember just having a really hard time. My friends that I sat with at lunch were not super supportive. I
Well,
won't get
those
into
weren't
that
friends.
story. Well, but I was lucky because my cousin and my older sister were like, they also went to school with me. So I got to go and just sit with them, and they were my support system. Like without them, I don't know what I would have done. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interject. Help me out here. Is this because again, I don't know. There's oftentimes when people tell me stories. I'm such like a storyteller in my mind. I don't know if I embellish and add things later on. But was there a time where you went and maybe it was your oldest sister, Vadi, when you went into the bathroom and she consoled you there? Was this the high school?
Yeah, that was okay. So this is going back to the third grade when I first lost my hair and I didn't know what to do, so I would wear a wig to school. So back then, just some context, like wigs are really popular now. Like there's so many wig stores and places to get wigs. Back then, like that was not accessible. So especially as like a little girl, they didn't have wigs my size. So I had to buy an adult size wig and I wore it to school.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, so yeah, it was not a good idea, but like also like I was really grateful because it was the best that my mom could do, and she was really trying to make sure I didn't feel you know excluded or anything. So yeah, I had an adult size wig and I put a hat on top of it to like secure it in place, and I went to school, and like I said, I was like super active, so I wanted to keep playing handball. And I remember that I would always play handball we had like different court systems, and I would play at the one where all the guys would play, and they didn't like it because I would always beat them. And I
That's that
insisted
fragile
on
male ego for you.
I insisted on still playing at that court. And so I was on such a roll. I remember I was like beating everyone in handball, and then I had to go and get the ball, and I bent down to pick it up, and my wig just like fell off in front of everyone in front of the
Oh
entire
no.
playground. And I didn't know what to do. I picked up my wig and I like just sprinted for the bathroom, and it was truly like it's an interesting story because my older sister, Vadi, who was in the fifth grade at the time, she wasn't even on her lunch break. Like her fifth graders had a different lunch break. She just happened to be walking by the playground at that time,
Wow.
and she saw the entire thing, and she sprinted after me, followed me to the bathroom. She fixed my wig for me. And I remember I was like sobbing and I didn't know what to do. And that's when I remember she told me, like, I don't know, like, I have so much love for my older sister, Body. She's been my rock through life. I don't know that many fifth graders that have the kind of wisdom to tell you that, like, you have an option of how you deal with the situation. And I remember her telling me to like go out there, be like feeling super strong because I was still beautiful, and not to really care what other people thought. And I remember she just instilled such a sense of um, contentment that I like just walked out of that bathroom like not even caring about what just happened. I just went straight back to playing handball and didn't listen to anyone. It was great.
What a kick-ass older sister.
I know, she's the best. She's literally the best.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely blessed to have that support structure to help you
Mhm.
through those young school years. I mean, At first, when you started talking about it, I thought to myself, because I have an autoimmune disorder myself, so I'm sitting here comparing mine to yours as I'm listening to it. I didn't. I have what's called scleroderma. It's an autoimmune disease. The immune system attacks the body, but instead of the say hair follicles specifically, it can attack all organs, so many different parts of the body,
Wow.
resulting in scarring and, I mean, at its worst, death because of internal bleeding. There's no cure for it, and its symptoms vary from person to person. Excuse me. And mine didn't trigger until late in life. 5 years ago, it triggered, and it's been debilitating enough for me to be homebound for the last 5 years. I lost extreme weight, radically changed my appearance. I got visible scarring on my skin. It triggered arthritis. It effectively just disabled me. But I thought to myself as you started, I mean, this is something in kind of in third grade. I thought to myself, I'm like, man, I'm sitting here wondering, it's a good thing if you had to go through this. It's a good thing you went through it young. Because I was thinking
Yep.
about, I
I
was,
was thinking the same
I was
thing
thinking
too.
about when I was young, and it never ceases to amaze me today that every time I look back, how ridiculously self conscious and how much I worried about my self image. I was constantly worrying about what other people, viewed me as. Going every day to school. We weren't rich, so I was wearing starter and what what most of my fellow students would call secondhand clothes. They would laugh. So for me to lose my hair at those times in which I was super conscious of the way I looked would have been absolutely devastating. And I'm sure this is an adolescent phase, at least in modern times, for everyone, where you just so, super concerned and overly concerned about how you look versus just enjoying school, your studies, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just really glad you had that family support structure throughout those times because, as we all know, you know, school environments can be rough, especially when you talk about the emotional pressures, the myriad of emotional pressures during the adolescent time.
Yeah. Yeah, and to add to that, I think, like having family support was definitely, so integral. But I think on top of that, what really makes something like this not feel as much like a test, um, going back to what my parents would tell me from a very young age, it's really instilling this sense of identity in like your true self rather in things that pass. So like so much of society tells us to base our identity in the things we have, in our material bodies, on what we look like, on you know on these things that do not last. And, as much as they do kind of identify us because, it's what we look like, it's what we have, it's where we live, it's not who we are. Like who we are all like noble souls that possesses spiritual qualities, and that's something that no one has the control of taking away from you. You always have the control over that. You always have the control of how you want to try to use those qualities, how you want to grow those qualities, grow the capacity in those qualities. And basing identity in that, I feel like is something that it doesn't when when you wake up one day with hair and you wake up one day without hair, it hasn't affected who you are inside. As much as it may be shocking and it's hurtful definitely at times, like I'm not a wall, like these things affect me, it also like I don't know, like it kind of just you still are the same person and you still have control over who you are. And I think that is something that has been alopecia has taught me that, and it's been the greatest blessing, I think, having alopecia in my life, because um, learning that from a young age, I think, has really shaped the person that I am.
Word. Word.
Yeah, not from a Tim, and I mean, I'm not here to cast aspersions on anyone who may be struggling with any condition or disease that greatly affects their quality of life. But how often do you hear something like that saying that your condition is the greatest blessing that you ever had? You know, most people have a different attitude towards it, where they lament their circumstances. They may be really bitter,
Right.
or even if they've come to a point where they can accept whatever they may have, they definitely won't get to the point where they're saying it's the greatest blessing that they ever had. And going back to what Tim was saying about you getting it when you were younger, I think that's the greatest blessing out of this whole thing. Because again, I have confidence in your inner fortitude that even if you were to get this condition later on in life, that you would be able to get through it. But happening at such a young age, I think that it kind of forced you to not tether the concept of your identity to your physical appearance. And it also beset you with a test so early on in life. And we all know here that the more you plow the soil, the more fertile it becomes. So you're already building your character at such a young age with such a huge test at the age of what, 8, 9, and third grade. So you're forced to really understand at an early age that, again, my concept of myself has really no connection whatsoever to the way I look. And yeah, I am Nava and I do look like this, but Nava isn't the way she looks. You know, Nava has a soul, and Nava has character traits and attributes. And those are the things that I'm going to focus on and attach my identity to, as opposed to something that's transient in nature anyways, which is your physical appearance.
So,
Yeah.
Nava, real quick, jumping in on that note, and the conversation went from that kind of physical identity to a deeper sense of identity. So I'm curious, maybe you could help share what were some of the, say, qualities you talked about, spiritual qualities. How could you put that into kind of like practical terms for us? What were those qualities you say that you might have developed, particularly from alopecia, and and perhaps even being with your family? And it sounds like your family upbringing was really strong. So what were some of those qualities? How would you, when we say identify, those qualities specifically?
Yeah. Yeah. So I grew up as a Baha'i, in a Baha'i household, and from a very young age, I learned about my soul. And there's an analogy that I really like. There's, it's actually, I know I see here my name is labeled as Adorn Your Soul, and it's where this comes from. But um, there's an analogy that your soul is uh, like a tree, for example, and you get to adorn it with different ornaments, and these are like your virtues, your different spiritual qualities, and that's what makes it beautiful. So when I say like spiritual qualities, there's, so many virtues that come to mind, like truthfulness, love, forgiveness, um, humility, fortitude, steadfastness, having a sin covering eye. These are all different like qualities that come to mind, that I've learned about. I think for me in particular, I think two qualities that I've been alopecia has helped me kind of work on. Definitely not even close to mastering, but just kind of grow my capacity a little bit and being able to exemplify these virtues. I think is courage. Courage was definitely one that, from a very young age, I think, you know, I had to I had to build in myself. And then I think another one was fortitude, like this idea of continuing to strive despite the hardships coming in your way. Um, yeah, I think those are probably two that I've been thinking about.
Sorry, no, if you don't mind, can you repeat that first one? I was having some technical difficulties.
Oh yeah. I said the two qualities that I mentioned was courage and fortitude.
And then Nava, a follow-up question here, which goes back to kind of like the identity from the kind of cultural standpoint. I heard you say a few times being a Persian woman or a Persian girl and hair, and it was referenced in such a way that perhaps those who don't know, you might share a little bit about the cultural impact of being a woman and your hair and the significance of that.
Yeah. I think uh, Persians are very much known for their hair. Hair is kind of like I don't know, it's kind of everything. I remember like just, not just like hair on your head, but like eyebrows and
No,
eyelashes,
no,
like,
sorry,
what'd
I've
you
been holding
say?
on to this. Can you imagine an older Persian girl it happening to them? I can even imagine that all their hair just completely falls off like
Yeah.
overnight, and they go into the mirror and like, oh my god, my eyebrows are gone.
No, yeah. It's such a big part of our culture. Yeah, I think especially like Persian women, there's always been talk around their hair. In Iran, there's women are forced to cover their hair, but hair is still such a big part of the identity of a Persian woman, the femininity. Especially having three other sisters. Um, it's kind of that was kind of like a hard thing. Like all my sisters would go get their eyebrows done. They would go get like different thing, and I just never had that experience. Um, there were a few situations that I like really felt it impact how I felt as a woman in particular. Like I remember there was one time that we were on a road trip somewhere, like I think we're in like Arizona or something. And it was when I was like a lot younger and I wouldn't wear like a bandana. And I was in a McDonald's. We had stopped to go like use the restroom in McDonald's. And all my sisters and I like walked into the women's bathroom and there was like an older lady there who was like, why is there a guy in here? I was like, oh my God.
Oh,
That was
Damn.
like
oh no.
the worst. I remember I was like so upset after that. And I remember turning to my sister and I'm like, what guy wears an Abercrombie cropped jacket? But yeah, that was a hard one. But yeah, I think in terms of um the cultural standpoint, yeah, like I just remember as a young girl I had really really thick black straight hair, and it was always the first thing that people would kind of identify me as. It was always like something people would talk about. Had like really thick eyebrows and really thick eyelashes, and um it's just something people would talk about a lot, like, oh, like you have such beautiful hair, it's so shiny. And so losing that, felt like I was losing all those things that people would notice first about me. But um, you know, I guess now people can see other sides of me that are more important.
Wait, you brought up something that I didn't even think about. Do you lose your eyelashes as well?
Yeah, that
Oh
was
wow,
losing my eyelashes and eyebrows was like the hardest part about it
harder
all.
than the
Because
hair, like I was
yeah,
saying,
yeah,
harder than
because
the
it
hair.
it like changes the shape of your face. Like it changes, like someone without eyebrows or eyelashes, like it just looks different. Whereas like if you don't have hair, like you can put a hat on, you can like do this or that. And you know, as a young girl, like I wasn't gonna like draw on my eyebrows or anything. Like I like wasn't gonna do anything like that. So that was like a harder part for sure.
I want to say that yeah, I'm so grateful and proud of, the family, whatever family and friends you've had throughout your life to help you just live your life and go through each day with the unique challenges. Um as a woman of your culture with this in particular condition through life up to this point. Um, um, I wasn't born a Baha'i, but I have some Christian background experience growing up. But I must say it was really a lot of the role modeling from my
Your good
grandparents.
friend Armand. Oh, sorry.
Grandparents Armand. Yeah, Armand too. Go ahead, add Armand in. That I guess formed the cushion I could land on when my condition hit me. By by 2015, I think I had already was seeing life on a much more deeper level, spiritual, I guess spiritual realistic sense that I could just fall back on once I had lost my ability to just function normally in life. And I'm just glad that, you had your faith, you had your family there. So that's definitely something I'm resonating with. And I'm hoping that, outside of just being in a pandemic currently, and a lot of us just being trapped in our homes and having our social lives and the amount of social interaction probably reduced at our current point in time, I sure hope that the years have been good to you as far as just living in your own skin, living with this condition. Which brings up another curious thought, and that's if you're willing to share. How, and to whatever degree, has this affected your romantic engagements at all in life? People with disabilities or conditions, with the jungle out there as far as the ups and downs of dating in the 21st century. Has this really impacted a lot of your social engagements at all, especially in the romantic field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's something that brought a lot of stress when I was younger. I remember like when I was younger, that was like the thing that I would worry about. I would tell my mom like I was just worried, that I wasn't going to be viewed as like attractive or people wouldn't like me or this and that. But um I think luckily like it truly hasn't impacted, you know, that side of uh my life in the sense that luckily I've never had like a negative situation. Um I I remember like it being nerve-wracking like telling someone like, oh, like I have like by the way, like if you
Right,
didn't know,
right,
like I have alopecia. But in all the situations, like in friends or whatever situation that has happened, like it's something that people have embraced and like loved me even more because of that. And so I feel I'm really lucky in that sense. Something else I did want to say though earlier, I just wanted to like put a little disclaimer. Um, as difficult as the situation was for me in my life, um, people go through so much more. And alopecia, like, yes, it was difficult, but I also, um, like Tim, when you were sharing, I don't know what your situation is like because for me, I always knew that even though I was losing my hair, like I still had a lot of my health. Like my health wasn't really in question.
right,
So
right.
it was like I think for those situations, I'm sure it's even a deeper level of a test. Like there's different questions that go into your mind. So that's just like one thing I wanted to just put in there.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I tell my friends and family all the time. I kind of try to encourage, or should I say, discourage my friends and family from really finding themselves in a moment where they're comparing their circumstance with another. A lot of people feel guilty, because maybe they feel their situation or struggle they're going through is not as bad as another, or is a lot more worse than what another is describing. And maybe he or she feels that the other person really should be a lot grateful. I shouldn't be whining as much. I tell people, like, it's my belief that, you take anyone, put them next to each other and have them go through a similar circumstance, and just the diversity and the complexity of differences, that each person will go through in a similar circumstance is dumbfounding. And,
Yeah.
if you have one person going through a certain situation for the first time in his or her life, it very well may be traumatic. I'll even challenge just as traumatic as, say, a person who maybe found him or herself in a shark attack. If you haven't experienced something before and you're encountering this for the first time, especially going up against a lifestyle or a life that you're just so used to, it's going to hit you really hard, regardless of what,
Yeah.
the wider world sees as, oh, not as severe, not as light, not as that. But it's always good, to just express your consciousness and your acknowledgement that, it could be a lot worse. So we definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, I want to second that for sure. Yeah, for all of us in our various walk of life, various things we go through, my sense is everyone who's in the planet is getting many opportunities, being challenged from many different angles. It's very real for them, for each of us in our own experience. And it can be honored, it can be accepted. I think the healing takes place as soon as we do that and begin to walk once again the journey and support each other. So, definitely want to second that part, Tim. I also want to ask you if you're willing to share in your experience with your condition, in your health journey, and coming on over the past 5 years, really intense changes. How about for you? What maybe on two fronts? What were some of those qualities you've really honed in on over the past years, and or whatever you're kind of feeling? What about the kind of romance, the dating, and uh, the identity of being a man within that regards, what you're currently going through on your health journey?
Yeah, good question. I was when Nava was expressing her family support structure and how her family was, played a huge role in to her weathering her unique ups and downs of this experience. And then when you brought up your faith, the Baha'i faith, I'm pretty much the same there. I have many thanks and gratitude to give to my family support, especially my family, and my friends, as well as my beliefs, which is actually an accumulation of both Christian values and just a lot of other values and perspectives I've been picking up through my other relational and religious experiences, the Baha'i faith including. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've reflected upon, my circumstance, the severity of it and the direness of it in relation to, what many others, how many others may weather this same circumstance if they were in the same circumstance. And, the thing I keep coming back to is being grateful for the the upbringing, I guess, because I really wasn't into church heavily. And even in my Baha'i experiences, my focus and most of my experiences weighed heavily on just the people I was around, and a lot of the activities I participated in, I really just wanted to be around the many friends I was making, the many brothers and sisters I was making. And I was really leaning hard on the spirit of fellowship that I felt heavily in regards to all of that. Um, so it's really just this core belief and my disposition. I have a very positive attitude that, obviously I thank God for, but also my family. I have a lot of women in my family who I was raised around. And I know that a lot of my mental makeup has been built by them. So I know I'm just grateful that I was raised around them, so that when this situation hit, I'm able to have a very positive disposition. Self-image was a huge one. I didn't realize how much I depended on my height, my muscles, and the way I looked. Once I lost that, I just when you every time in life, just when you think you can't learn anymore, or you thought you learned it all, you know, you just learn that much more. So this condition, the silver lining, stripped away even more of what I now view as a lot of the societal social gunk um, that really made up my identity, and now truly added a lot more authenticity in my life. Now I don't have to rely on my looks or waste so much time and energy when I'm around people and my interactions wondering how I look. That's just that much more energy and focus I can put into everything else one can focus on in interaction with another. And as far as romance is concerned, I've a huge personality, very extroverted, and most of my fulfillment in life and pleasure is very mental. So luckily, when I'm engaged in deep, meaningful interactions and conversations, you know, I can be a pretty happy guy, a happy man, as long as I'm engaged in that, because that's very, very important, something I highly value in my life. So it's definitely a matter of luck, um, being blessed, um, that I've been raised the way I was raised, and I'm surrounded by the family and friends that I've been around.
True. Yeah. Thanks.
I have a question going back to Nava because Tim, obviously, I talk to you every day and I know your situation and how you handle talking about your condition in your romantic relationships. But for you, Nava, I guess it's a two-part question. Number one, have you felt comfortable enough, not just telling, but actually showing someone what you look like without a leg when you've been getting to know them better? And if you haven't, then at what point do you think you'd feel comfortable enough in the relationship to show someone how you look without the wig? Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Tim, for sharing that. That was really great. I really appreciate you opening up. Um, yeah, I have. I'm a pretty open person. Um, like when there's people that just like hang around my house a lot and like my close friends, like, it's like a little nerve-wracking at the beginning, but I don't know. I think I just try to not place so much emphasis on it because there's one thing I've learned in my life is like when you make something a big deal in your head before actually trying it, like it becomes a bigger deal than it needs to be. So I try to just not get in my head about those things and just try to be myself.
Yeah, you know, I guess and for me, if to any other listeners out there, but to you, Nava, as well, who's going through similar situations, um, I think I would say that, and this is kind of really hard for me to articulate. It's like if you're lucky enough to be in a situation where a lot of the social realities you relied on before your condition um, is stripped away, then your dependence and reliance very much jumps towards something else. And it's my hope that for many people in the world that this dependence, this reliance lands on something that's very real and very authentic. Um, I know that I went from worrying about how I look to now being super concerned with making sure I hear every nuance of what somebody else is saying, whether it's a family, whether it's a friend, just the amount of focus that I had before my condition triggered. It is nothing like it was before. I feel like I can actually, mentally and metaphysically see through the person who's speaking. And it's allowing me to absorb so much more in my interactions than I ever could before. So I know in the last 5 years that I've met so many people. I've been using dating sites. I've met so many women in my life that I still talk to this day that we're great friends. And the level of deepness that I've been able to exercise with many people in my life, but especially to the women in my life, has been nothing like it was before. So even with all the ongoing stuff that I'm going through, I can't say that I, would I go back? Would I want a normal life before my condition? Sure. But now, if I was given the wish, if I was given the opportunity, I would not want to go back to how I was without the breath of the death of foresight that I have that I didn't have before. I want to take that with me. So I always thought, especially in the beginning of my condition, how hard it would be to tell another girl that, hey, I have this condition. This is what I looked like before. This is what I look like now. It's horrifying. It's scary, and it can bring you down without this proper support and positive spiritual and emotional grounding. But what I realize is that the disengagement, the honesty, the authenticity of letting your prospective partner know that this is what you're going through, it is really empowering to you, and to them as well. But you can feel it when you're forced to tell someone of such a vulnerability. Transparency and vulnerability is something we need in high levels in our society, in so many levels anyway.
Exactly.
So for you to be forced to exercise that type of vulnerability with someone, there's a silver lining in it. It's kind of a hard lesson that comes with a hard thing of life you're forced to deal with. So I think that's been my condition has helped me in my romantic engagements in that way, and helping to form a lot more realistic and authentic bonds that's not so mired in societal
Dross.
yes, just societal muck, that is being put into people in society.
Yeah, Tim, what you said earlier about, like if you were asked to go back, you wouldn't. Because I've had like a similar situation. I remember just a year or two ago, um, there was like this doctor doing some tests, and they thought that they found a potential solution for alopecia where you could grow your hair back. And it was funny because like I had anxiety to grow my hair back, and that's something I never thought I would have had. But it reminds me of this.
What a transformation!
I know.
Wow. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you can't imagine. But go ahead.
No, yeah, but it reminds me of this analogy that I really like about tests. So when there's a bird that's hatching from its uh like egg for the first time, um it begins like when the egg first starts to crack, um a lot of pressure is put on the bird. Like it's very difficult for the bird to get out, and it has to use its wings to push against the shell. And as someone like looking at it from like a third party, you may very wish to like help the bird and to like peel away parts of the egg for it so it doesn't have to go through that difficulty. But actually, if you do that, you're hurting the bird, because if the bird doesn't use its wings to push against the shell, it doesn't actually form the proper muscles that it needs to be able to fly in the future. And I always think about that. Like when you're in the moment of hardship, it's really easy to think that you want someone to come and like pick the shell so you don't have to go through it. But once you've reached the point of flying and you know what that feels like, you know why you had to go through the difficulty in the first place. And you come to like appreciate it for what it was.
Beautiful. That perfectly encapsulates my previous articulation. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, that was a beautiful analogy, Nava. I've heard a similar analogies in the past, but never that particular one. And yeah, and as a Baha'i as well, it's like ingrained into our brains from the time early on, 13, 14, 15, when we first really start to get more involved and learn more things about the faith, that trials and tribulations help build character. The whole purpose of this life is to grow your spiritual qualities in preparation for the next life, yada, yada, yada. But again, we're human beings. In the time of hardship, it's always very difficult. And even though we may be conscious of this in the back of our minds, it doesn't really ever help so much in the moment. But when you look back at things retroactively, you're like, wow, yep, I'm really happy that happened. Because had it not happened, I probably wouldn't have learned this very valuable life lesson. So obviously, I've personally never experienced anything to the degree that either one of you have when it comes to body transformation and it impacting my identity and self-image. But in regard to other areas of my life, like everyone in the world, I've definitely been through trials and tribulations. And whenever I'm kind of past it, I'm always like, yes, thank you for that one, God. So
I got a question
Amen
then,
to that.
following up, and we're all talking about challenges, yet really profound blessings coming from these challenges. Quickly, there's a thought that life presents it to us, or we say we thank God, thank Creator. We can do that too. So we could say, it's by design that we might be getting these challenges. So life has given us these things sometimes, whether we want them or not. So what I'm curious about is, what about when life doesn't do that, and are we working on changes personally? What are they?
Right. Well, I think one of the realizations I've come to in going through this experience is the vacuum that's created because you're having so many societal norms that you were dependent upon beforehand, just stripped away. And I think one of the eye openers just the lack of community in the world. There's a famous psychotherapist I follow through her books, podcasts, interviews, et cetera, et cetera. Her name's Esther Perel. And one of her mottos is
shout out to Marissa, right, Tim? Because that's who put you on.
Samira, actually. A good friend of mine named Samira was the first one who suggested that I listen to her. So thank you, Samira.
Or shout out to Samira. But shout out to Marissa too, because Marissa put me on to Esther Perel. So
yeah. So one of her models was that the amount of reliance and dependence that we look for under the umbrella of romanticism in our day and age within one person, we're basically asking one person to provide to us what a whole village used to provide for all the previous generations before this one. So it's a major deal, just even through social science, what's going on in the 21st century as far as our relationships are concerned, big and small, romantic or platonic. And I know somewhere in the Baha'i faith, there's this quote talking about the harmony of science and religion. And let me tell you, like in the last few years, I've been going so hard to paint into so many different fields of science recreationally through books and videos. And, every time I hear a piece of scripture, whether it's from the Bible or other different religions, I've heard it before just through some type of scientific knowledge, or program that I've watched. It's just in a different form. And it just amazes me how it just feels to me that when I hear people, getting in their knees and they're having these moments of crisis where, you see them in the movies, they blame God, like, curse you. Where were you when I lost this person? And I think to myself, I'm like, all of the stuff I'm learning through sociology and psychology, a lot of the misery we're going through is a product of our own. Don't blame him. What I'm saying? There's just so many social realities that we've learned in the last 2 to 3 decades here, last 2 centuries, that we have yet to really centralize in our everyday today, at this moment, but we'll get there. But people who aren't going through hardships, what I'm saying, are very much in a position to shine a lot of the human and spiritual attributes that people who are going through hardships won't be able to do, or have a much harder time able to exercise and role model. So it's really dawned upon me that we have so much diversity in our life experiences and life paths, and that's meant to add focus and accuracy into each other's lives. We're meant to constantly mirror each other and be open and vulnerable to each other. So when we look into each other, when we're leaning on one another, there's some type of, excuse me, social and spiritual nutrients that we aren't getting ourselves that we can get from the other person. Esther Perel described us as walking constellation of stars. Some of these stars are bright, some of them are dimming, and they're constantly, growing bright and dimming depending on what experiences we're going through. And each star represents a certain facet of humanity, whether it's courage, whether it's confidence, whether it's empathy, emotional resilience, whatever it is. We have various degrees and intensities of all of those attributes. And depending on where we are in life, some of us may be shining brighter in that respect. Some of us may be lacking in that respect. And it just makes perfect sense in my life personally why we are supposed to be living in a community. Just the social advantage that comes with survival and being able to turn towards anyone and lean on them and ask them for guidance and assistance. But that's my long-winded perspective here on what Jason just said.
Yeah, to answer your question, Jason, which I took to mean, how does one grow without the catalyst of some in particular test befalling them, aside from the day-to-day challenges that we all experience? And I'd answer that by saying that I don't think it's possible without being introspective and reflecting on a daily basis. As Baha'is, as Baha'is, we're all familiar, or everyone's Baha'i, but technically besides Tim, but Tim's familiar. So we're familiar with the quote, bring thyself to a reckoning each day. Or excuse me, bring thyself into account each day, ere thou art summoned to a reckoning. And we're pretty much, that's asking us to reflect on a day-to-day basis about our actions and looking at areas we can improve on in our life. And if you don't do this, I think you're exponentially more susceptible to becoming a victim of norms of behavior and certain patterns of thought that aren't beneficial to your growth. And the only real way you can challenge things that we've been conditioned and socialized to believe is through reflecting upon them and seeing what an alternative perspective or an alternative way of life may be. And if you don't, you're pretty much on autopilot. I mean, in the Baha'i faith, we kind of break things down into 4 different kingdoms. You can say there's a mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. And the thing that's very clear, there's clearly things that separate each kingdom. And as far as humans are concerned, we're really the only kingdom that's capable of conscious reflection and thought and thinking about our actions. And if we don't do this, what really separates us from the animal? Are we just living off of instinct? We're just living, again, following social norms and adhering to them without really examining them for what they may be and what value they may hold. So I feel like the only true way to grow your character and to progress spiritually is through daily reflection. And if you put this into practice, you are much more likely, not even much more likely, because again, if you don't put it into practice, I don't think it can really happen in a true sense. So you put this into practice, you are therefore forcing yourself to grow, however marginally, because you are, again, examining your actions and how you've basically, whether it's as far as how you treat your friends, your family, etc., but also how you just handle certain situations, how you're thinking about and approaching certain situations. You're able to go back and like, wow, yeah, today I was thinking about this in this way, but why was I doing that? Is there a better way to approach this? Could I have handled that situation better? So to me, that's the only way where you can continue to reform your conduct and grow in a way that isn't beset again by a catalyst like, oh, I just lost my job, or I just broke up with my boyfriend or girlfriend, or I'm having issues with my best friend. Like, again, aside from those things that kind of force you into reflection and growth, without those, you have to force it upon yourself through reflection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. To build off of what Armand just said too, I want to think about how to say this, like how to articulate this coherently, but I don't think I've ever met someone who isn't going through a test. And the thing that makes it tricky is some tests are harder to identify as tests than others. I think, like, for what I
Well
went through
said.
in my life, it's very clear to label that as a test. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I just
But
said well said.
yeah,
We can hear you.
sorry. But yeah, I think for my situation, I think like it's very easy to tell that this was a test. But I don't know. I think probably something that is I think is can be harmful is sometimes seeing people that are living in luxury and comfort and thinking that that's not a test in and of itself. Not the actual living in comfort, but in the sense that I live in an area where like there's a lot of people that are doing pretty well in life. Things seem very comfortable, but there's
Materially speaking.
materially speaking, but there's sometimes a level of apathy that I can sense in the community where like we are stuck in our bubble and we're not concerned with the things going on outside of the world. And this is a test. I think that's harder to see as a test, and it requires what Armand was saying as constant reflection on our actions. Um, like being able to see the world at large and see the sufferings of humanity and trying to do something about it. That's essential to life. Like we have to do that. So I don't know if what I'm saying sounds coherent or I'm articulating it the best, but I don't know. I'm kind of just thinking about what we are labeling, like how we are defining tests and difficulties in life.
I mean, yeah, very, very much what you said was adding to what Armand was saying. I mean, that's a very important point, right? How many of us actually realize that we're actually going through a hardship? much less, what to take away from it. What's the point? A lot of us aren't raised and come into this world where a lot of family values are surrounding a certain religion, you know. So I mean that's an excellent point.
Yeah, and I think like also just we know like the greatest gems are the ones that are created with a lot of pressure on them. And so like when people are not, when there's areas where people are not feeling those pressures, like it's hard to see what the gems are, but I don't know.
Yeah. So with that being said, too, I really appreciate all the comments about this, right? And when we think about growth and say the pressure that could potentially lead to awareness and learning. So maybe we could. I'm curious because some folks listening who might have a difficult time with that, right? They're trying to make that intellectual jump or emotional jump from, or maybe spiritual jump from life kind of dealing out these difficult moments and really suffering through it, not maybe handling it so well. Maybe it feels like it's just getting more and more intense. So I'm curious for all of us here, and especially Nava as our guest and starting us off with some of your learning, but for all of us, what are what's a practical step? I'm someone who's kind of feeling stressed out about life in a variety of ways. If I were to ask you as a friend, what's a practical thing I can do today? An actual thing I can do to kind of start to assist me in seeing it different or understanding a different angle. What's a practice I can incorporate so I can go to that awareness rather than a reaction of, oh man, again, me again? How do I start to change that? Any thoughts?
Serving other people
Yes.
in
Yeah.
some capacity, however big or small. It can look as basic as you focusing on a friend that may be going through a hard time and really being present there for them and offering your time, offering your ears to listen, offering your voice as advice, just being a source of comfort for that person to help pull them through whatever difficult circumstance they may be feeling. It could be something as simple as that, or something bigger, or you get more involved with a volunteer organization that's focused on helping the community in some regard. Whatever it is, however big or small, focusing on someone else and helping them out will immensely help you with your own problems. Not because it's going to magically make your difficulties disappear, but you get so much joy and benefit from helping a fellow member of society that there's going to be an influx of so much profound joy in your life that wasn't present before, that your circumstances will start to seem small and more manageable, and that you'll be able to overcome them, as opposed to something that may have seemed insurmountable previously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and no, go ahead,
I was
Nava. No, go ahead, Nava.
No, no, no. I was just gonna echo what Armand said. I think, yeah, we spend so much of our time focusing on our own difficulties, our own struggles. Um, but at the center of that is ourselves. So like when we learn how to put our communities and other people at the center, it doesn't magnify the difficulties that are going on in our own lives so much. So I was just gonna echo that.
And I would say just offering it from sociology and social science perspective is for viewers to just realize that these times of hardships are actually the most opportune moments for you to grow. There are so many social attributes that you can take in and grow from your unique experience. It's funny how Jason posed a question and landed on this. For my viewers and Nava, of course, my co-hosts are aware of it. I'm also a recreational writer. I write a lot of proverbs and a lot of deep, meaningful expressions to the people I meet in my life, just to show affection and promote positivity. So one of the ones I actually wrote for today's episode happens to coincide with this. And I reads, let me see. The best part of a good, clear sense of who you are is ultimately the potency of knowledge and information you are able to pass on to someone else. Pain, joy, embarrassment, regret. It's who all of us are. It's human. If we can't confront and accept these inherent emotions in ourselves, then passing on who you are is merely passing on who you think you are. And that, my friends, is not teaching others to be the best they can be. It's teaching them to be simply someone else. So, just harking back on what Armand and Nava just said, that's the one thing I tell friends and family immediately. It's the first thing off my mind. Teaching tool. It's a teaching tool. Whatever you're going through, somebody's going through something similar. It puts you in a very unique position for them, for other people to relate to you in your unique circumstance, more so than anyone else who's not going through it. You're already in a unique position to be a great teacher and a great pillar to lean on. So that's a given. That's an automatic. And it should help usher in a lot of stability and just a lot of self-assurance in what you're going through. It'll definitely help take the edge off the burden you're going through. Nothing when it relates to human beings is coincidence. Everything's deeply purposeful because we're meant to coexist with each other. So, yeah, that's definitely something that I can tell you for sure most people don't think about. And I keep in touch with a lot of people, but your hardships are a teaching tool always.
Well said.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Jason.
Well said. That's all. Beautiful.
True. So I'm just being aware of the time here. I know Jason and Nava has some time constraints on their hands. So if anyone had any final words, I know, Tim, that you had something else prepared for Nava as well. But Nava or Jason, if you guys have any final words before we wrap it up and put a bow on it.
If I may, actually, just on my end, wrap it up and put a bow on it, and just really thank to Nava and sharing your story, sharing with us in this conversation. It's a pleasure to hear your perspectives, and I hope that your story will continue to be shared, and people will continue to learn from you. And big shout out to your family for sure. Absolutely, that's fantastic,
Thank
and
you.
true blessings in that way. Also, Big Tim, always thanks for sharing so candidly as usual, and sharing with us your journey and your eloquence as always, and your creativity with those words, man. Those are meaningful and powerful. As always, Armand, thanks for bringing it together today, and looking forward to the next one, y'all. So thanks for all your time and your energies, your questions, and your stories. And with that, I'm just gonna say, y'all have a blessed day.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, peace out, bro.
Well,
All right, Tim, and if you want to go ahead.
all right. Well, yeah, if you and Nava have anything else to say. So, to my viewers, to my guest, um, this is our first episode. We'd like to extend our appreciation, love, good health, and safe wishes towards everyone who's here and everyone who happens to be listening to this. Being the year of 2020 during a pandemic, we're all going through stress and we're all in this together. So don't count any moment of your everyday in this day and age as anything less than profound. Just get up and keep moving forward. You got to fight. It's not just your life. You have to keep up. We all depend on each other, and there's going to be many instances and opportunities in everyone's life to be in a position to help another. So we need each other to persevere and stay steadfast. And second, and just to repeat something I said earlier, is that I am a writer, and this is our first episode. So we're very much trying to shape and create a podcast identity as we move on. But one thing I hope to bring to these podcasts and to viewers and guests alike is the focus and importance on all of us, everyday average people. You don't need to be famous. You don't need a degree to be a deeply profound person to help build a better future for anyone. And I'm hoping through these podcasts in general and through sharing some of my recreational writings that I can help promote some of that. So with that being said, Nava, you're our first guest. So my first phrase during this podcast is directed to you as well as to our viewers. Dear Nava, yesterday marked the 100th year anniversary of the 19th Amendment, and this month will be remembered with the moment that a first Black woman ran as vice president. There's a lot about what makes a woman tick and a man tick that is being discovered through advances in social sciences and technological innovations. But even with all of this to be true, there is nothing more valuable than the knowledge and information that is shared through an individual's life experiences. So, with that being said, myself, Jason, and Armand, and listeners alike, thank you for your time and transparency. Much love and peace to you, and good health and safety on your journey.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm truly honored to be here and get a chance to talk to you all.
Indeed. So that's it. That ends today's episode. Thank you once again for everyone who listened in. Until next time, peace.